You're here because something inside you finally broke open. Not in a violent way, not in a desperate way, but in that quiet, inevitable way that only happens when you've exhausted every false path, every hollow promise, every distraction you once believed would save you. And now, in this stillness, in this strange and unexpected calm, you're beginning to realize something you couldn't have understood before. The universe doesn't respond to your searching. It responds to your readiness. Let me say that again, because this is where most people lose themselves for years. The universe doesn't respond to your searching. It responds to your readiness. And the difference between those two states is everything. Searching is noise. Searching is the frantic energy of someone who believes they're missing something, who believes that if they just read one more book, attend one more seminar, follow one more guru, clarity will finally arrive. But readiness is silence. Readiness is the profound inner shift that happens when you stop asking the universe to prove itself to you and start proving to yourself that you're finally willing to receive. You've been searching for so long. You've been running through your days with this underlying tension, this feeling that there's something you're supposed to find, something you're supposed to become, something you're supposed to unlock. And every time you thought you found it, every time you thought you finally had the answer, it slipped through your fingers. Not because you weren't smart enough, not because you weren't worthy enough, but because you weren't ready enough. And the universe, in its infinite intelligence, knows the difference. Think about the moments in your life when something profoundly important revealed itself to you. A truth about yourself, a realization about a relationship, a clarity about your purpose. Did those moments arrive because you were searching for them? Or did they arrive precisely when you stopped searching? When you finally surrendered the exhausting effort of trying to force understanding? When you finally let go of the need to control the timeline? When you finally accepted that maybe, just maybe, you didn't have all the answers yet? That's when it happened. That's when the door opened. This isn't mysticism. This isn't spiritual bypassing. This is the fundamental law of how transformation actually works. You cannot receive what you're not ready to hold. You cannot integrate what you're not prepared to carry. And the universe, with its ruthless compassion, will withhold from you everything you're begging for until you've built the inner foundation strong enough to sustain it. Because if it gave you what you wanted before you were ready, it would destroy you. Imagine someone who spent their entire life running from loneliness, filling every silent moment with noise, with people, with distractions, with anything that prevents them from being alone with themselves. And now imagine that person suddenly receiving the gift of solitude, the profound peace that comes from being completely comfortable in your own presence. What would happen? They would panic. They would spiral. They would immediately reach for the old patterns, the old escapes, because they haven't yet built the capacity to hold that much stillness. The gift would become a burden. The blessing would become a curse. Not because the gift itself was wrong, but because the timing was wrong. The universe knows this, and so it waits. It waits until you've done the inner work. It waits until you've faced the shadows you've been avoiding. It waits until you've grieved the versions of yourself that no longer serve you. It waits until you've stopped performing, stopped pretending, stopped trying to become someone else's idea of who you should be. And then, only then, when you've finally arrived at the truth of who you are. Does it reveal what you've been searching for all along? But here's the part that most people never understand. What you've been searching for isn't out there. It's not in another person. It's not in a different city. It's not in a new career or a new identity or a new version of yourself that you haven't yet become. What you've been searching for is already inside you. It's always been inside you. But you couldn't see it because you were too busy searching. You couldn't hear it because you were too busy making noise. You couldn't feel it because you were too busy running. And now, right now, in this moment, something has shifted. You've stopped running. You've stopped searching. You've stopped trying to force the universe to bend to your timeline. And in that surrender, in that profound act of letting go, you've finally become ready. Not ready in the sense that you have all the answers. Not ready in the sense that you've arrived at some final destination, but ready in the sense that you're finally willing to see yourself clearly. Ready in the sense that you're finally willing to receive what's been waiting for you all along. This is the paradox that breaks most people. You have to stop wanting it before you can have it. You have to stop chasing it before it can find you. You have to stop trying to control the outcome before the outcome can reveal itself. And that feels impossible. doesn't it? Because your entire life, you've been taught that effort equals results, that if you just work harder, push longer, sacrifice more, you'll eventually get what you want. But some things don't work that way. Some things can only come to you when you stop trying to make them come. Think about love, real love. Not the desperate, clinging, codependent kind of love that comes from fear and loneliness, but the deep, grounded, sovereign kind of love that comes from wholeness. Can you force someone to love you? Can you manipulate, convince, or coerce your way into genuine connection? Of course not. Love arrives when two people are ready to see each other. When two people have done enough inner work that they're no longer looking for someone to complete them, but someone to complement them. And until you reach that state of readiness, every relationship will feel like a battle. Every connection will feel like a compromise, because you're trying to extract from others what you haven't yet cultivated within yourself. The same is true for purpose, for clarity, for peace. You can't think your way into knowing your purpose. You can't strategize your way into clarity. You can't perform your way into peace. These things reveal themselves only when you've stopped trying to manufacture them. Only when you've built enough inner stillness that you can finally hear the quiet voice that's been speaking to you all along. And here's what nobody tells you about that voice. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It doesn't compete with all the noise in your head, all the opinions of others, all the societal expectations that have been layered onto you since childhood. It simply waits. It waits for you to get quiet enough, ready enough to listen. And when you finally do, when you finally stop searching and start receiving, everything changes. But getting to that place of readiness requires something most people aren't willing to give. It requires you to face the truth about yourself. Not the truth you've been performing, not the truth you've been pretending, but the raw, unfiltered, sometimes uncomfortable truth about who you actually are, what you actually want, and why you've been running from both for so long. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding this confrontation. They stay busy. They stay distracted. They stay surrounded by noise and people and obligations that prevent them from ever being alone with their own thoughts. Because somewhere deep down, they know that if they stop moving, if they stop performing, if they stop pretending, they'll have to face the gap between who they are and who they've been pretending to be. And that gap terrifies them. But here's the truth that will set you free if you're brave enough to accept it. That gap is exactly where your readiness lives. That uncomfortable space between your current reality and your authentic self is the crucible where transformation happens. And until you're willing to enter that space, until you're willing to sit with the discomfort of seeing yourself clearly, you'll keep searching. You'll keep running. You'll keep waiting for some external force to save you from the internal work you've been avoiding. The universe won't do that for you. It won't save you from yourself. But it will meet you the moment you decide to save yourself. The moment you decide to stop searching and start building. The moment you decide to stop performing and start being. The moment you decide to stop running and start rooting. That's when everything you've been searching for will find you. Not because the universe suddenly decided to be generous, but because you finally became ready to receive. And readiness isn't a single moment. It's not a destination you arrive at and then you're done. Readiness is a practice. It's a daily commitment to showing up as yourself, even when it's easier to hide. It's a daily commitment to facing your truth, even when it's easier to avoid. It's a daily commitment to building the inner foundation that allows you to hold more truth, more love, more purpose, more peace. Think of it like building a container. Right now, you have a certain capacity, a certain ability to hold complexity, to hold discomfort, to hold truth. And every time you do the inner work, every time you face a shadow instead of running from it, every time you choose honesty over performance, you expand that container. You increase your capacity. You become ready for more. But if you try to pour more into a container that isn't ready, what happens? It overflows. It spills. It creates chaos. And that's exactly what happens when people receive things they're not ready for. They get the relationship they thought they wanted, but they haven't healed their attachment wounds, so they sabotage it. They get the success they thought they craved, but they haven't built a sense of self-worth, independent of achievement, so they spear. They get the recognition they thought they needed, but they haven't developed the inner stability to handle visibility, so they collapse. The universe isn't withholding from you to punish you. It's withholding from you to protect you. Because it knows that if you received what you wanted before you were ready, it would break you. And so it waits. It waits until you've done the work. It waits until you've expanded the container. It waits until you've proven, not to the universe, but to yourself, that you're ready to hold what you've been asking for. And how do you prove that? Not through grand gestures, not through desperate prayers, not through endless searching. You prove it through the small, unsexy, unglamorous work of showing up for yourself every single day. You prove it by choosing presence over distraction. You prove it by choosing truth over comfort. You prove it by choosing growth over stagnation. And slowly, gradually, imperceptibly at first, something shifts. The desperation fades. The searching quiets. The noise settles. And in that stillness, you begin to notice what's been there all along. If you're feeling this right now, if something in these words is resonating with a part of you that's been waiting to be seen, then subscribe to this channel, because what we're doing here isn't entertainment. It's not motivation. It's not surface-level inspiration that makes you feel good for 5 minutes and then fades. What we're doing here is excavation. We're digging into the essential truths that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. And if you're ready for that, if you're ready to stop searching and start building, then you belong here. This is just the beginning, because now that we understand what readiness actually is, we need to talk about what happens when you finally reach it. We need to talk about the moment when the universe stops withholding and starts revealing. We need to talk about what changes, what stays the same, and why the arrival of what you've been searching for might not look anything like you imagined. So you've stopped searching. You've done the inner work. You've built the container. You've expanded your capacity. You've faced the shadows you've been avoiding. You've sat with the discomfort of seeing yourself clearly. You've surrendered the need to control the timeline. And now, finally, you're ready. But here's the part that nobody prepares you for. When what you've been searching for finally arrives, it doesn't feel like you thought it would. It doesn't feel like a grand revelation. It doesn't feel like fireworks and trumpets and cosmic confirmation. It feels quiet. It feels natural. It feels like coming home to a place you've never been but somehow always known. Because here's the truth. What you've been searching for isn't something new. It's not an external addition to your life. It's not a person or a place or a position that completes you. It's a remembering. It's a return to the version of yourself that existed before you were conditioned to search. Before you were taught that you were incomplete. Before you learned to perform for validation. To hustle for worthiness. To chase external markers of success while ignoring the internal, knowing that's been quietly guiding you all along. When you finally reach readiness, when you finally stop searching, what arrives isn't something you find. It's something you recognize. You recognize yourself. Not the self you've been performing. Not the self you've been pretending to be. But the essential, unchanging, sovereign self that's been underneath all the noise, all the fear, all the searching, and that recognition changes everything. Suddenly, the relationships that once felt complicated become simple. Not because the people changed, but because you changed. You stopped looking for others to complete you, to validate you, to save you from the emptiness you felt inside. And when you stopped expecting others to fill that void, you created space for genuine connection. Connection that isn't based on need, but on choice. Connection that isn't based on fear, but on freedom. Connection that isn't based on what you can extract from each other, but on what you can create together. Suddenly, the career that once felt like a prison becomes a playground. Not because the work changed, but because your relationship to it changed. You stopped defining your worth through achievement. You stopped performing for approval. You stopped hustling for recognition. And when you stopped using your work as a way to prove your value, you created space for genuine fulfillment. Fulfillment that isn't based on external validation, but on internal alignment. Fulfillment that isn't based on what you accomplish, but on who you become in the process of accomplishing it. Suddenly, the purpose that once felt elusive becomes obvious. Not because some cosmic force finally decided to reveal it to you, but because you finally became quiet enough to hear it. You stopped looking for purpose in grand gestures and dramatic transformations. You stopped waiting for some external sign to tell you what you're supposed to do. And when you stopped searching for purpose outside yourself, you realized it was never lost. It was always there, woven into the fabric of who you are, expressing itself in the way you naturally move through the world when you're not performing, not pretending, not trying to be someone you're not. This is what readiness unlocks. Not a new life, but a new relationship with the life you already have. Not a new self, but a new relationship with the self you've always been. And that shift, that subtle but profound recalibration, is more powerful than any external achievement, any external validation, any external addition could ever be. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you reach this state of readiness, once you stop searching and start receiving, the universe doesn't just give you what you thought you wanted. It gives you what you actually need. And those two things are rarely the same, because what you thought you wanted was shaped by conditioning, by fear, by the opinions of others, by the societal narratives that have been embedded in you since childhood. But what you actually need is aligned with your truth, with your essence, with the unique way you're meant to move through this world. Think about all the times you wanted something desperately, prodded for it, hid for it, and it didn't happen. And then, years later, you looked back and realized that not getting what you wanted was the best thing that could have happened to you. Because what you wanted would have kept you small. What you wanted would have kept you stuck. What you wanted would have prevented you from becoming who you needed to become. The universe knew that. And so it said no, not to punish you, but to protect you, to redirect you, to guide you toward what you actually needed, even though you couldn't see it at the time. This is the intelligence of divine timing. It's not random. It's not arbitrary. It's not the universe playing games with you. It's the universe responding to your frequency, to your readiness, to the version of yourself you're currently embodying. And when you shift, when you grow, when you expand your capacity, the universe shifts with you. What was once withheld becomes available. What was once invisible becomes obvious. What was once impossible becomes inevitable. But you have to trust the process. You have to trust that when something doesn't happen in your timeline, it's because there's a better timeline waiting. You have to trust that when a door closes, it's because there's a better door preparing to open. You have to trust that when you feel like nothing is happening, everything is happening beneath the surface, in the invisible realm of preparation, of readiness, of becoming. Most people can't handle this. Most people want guarantees. They want timelines. They want to know exactly when, exactly how, exactly what the outcome will be. But life doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't work that way. Transformation doesn't work that way. You don't get to see the full picture before you take the first step. You don't get to know the ending before you commit to the journey. You have to walk into the unknown with nothing but trust, nothing but faith, nothing but the quiet, knowing that if you keep showing up, if you keep doing the work, if you keep choosing readiness over resistance, everything will unfold exactly as it's meant to. And here's the paradox that will set you free if you can hold it. The moment you stop needing it to unfold, the moment you stop gripping so tightly to a specific outcome, the moment you surrender your attachment to how and when and what, that's when it unfolds faster, easier, more beautifully than you could have ever orchestrated yourself. Because you're no longer blocking the flow with your fear, with your control, with your desperate need for certainty. You're simply allowing, you're simply receiving. You're simply trusting that the universe has a plan far more intelligent than anything your limited human mind could design. This doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. This doesn't mean you abdicate responsibility for your life. This doesn't mean you use spiritual concepts as an excuse for inaction. Readiness is active. Readiness is engaged. Readiness is showing up every single day and doing the work. Not because you're trying to force an outcome, but because the work itself is the point. The work itself is the transformation. The work itself is what expands your capacity and prepares you for what's coming. Think of a seed planted in soil. Does the seed frantically search for the sun? Does it stress about whether it will grow? Does it try to control the process? No. It simply does what seeds do. It absorbs water it breaks open. It sends roots down and shoots up. It trusts the intelligence woven into its DNA. And in that trust, in that surrender to the natural unfolding, it becomes what it was always meant to become. You are that seed. And right now, you're underground. You're in the dark. You can't see the sun yet. You can't see the evidence of your growth yet. And it feels like nothing is happening, but everything is happening. Your roots are deepening. Your foundation is strengthening. Your readiness is building. And soon, very soon, you'll break through the surface and realize that every moment of darkness, every moment of waiting, every moment of not knowing was exactly what you needed to become strong enough to sustain the light. But you have to stop digging yourself up to check if you're growing. You have to stop doubting the process every time it doesn't match your timeline. You have to stop comparing your underground work to everyone else's visible growth. Because you don't know what season they're in. You don't know how long they were underground before they broke through. You don't know what they sacrificed, what they faced, what they built in the invisible realm before they became visible. Your only job is to focus on your own process. Your only job is to keep doing the inner work. Your only job is to keep showing up as yourself, even when nobody's watching, even when there's no external validation, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because every moment you choose truth over performance. Every moment you choose presence over distraction. Every moment you choose growth over comfort. You're expanding your readiness. And the universe is taking notes. It's watching the small choices you make when nobody else is watching. It's watching how you treat yourself when you're alone. It's watching whether you honor your commitments to yourself, whether you follow through on your intuition, whether you choose aligned action over comfortable stagnation. And based on those choices, based on the evidence you're providing that you're ready, it adjusts what it reveals to you. This is why two people can be exposed to the same information, the same opportunity, the same potential, and only one of them sees it. Only one of them receives it. Only one of them transforms because of it. Not because the universe is playing favorites, but because only one of them was ready. Only one of them had built the capacity to recognize it, to receive it, to integrate it. The other person wasn't ready yet, and so it passed right by them, invisible, unnoticed, waiting for them to catch up. So where are you right now? Are you still searching? Are you still frantically moving from thing to thing, hoping that the next book, the next course, the next teacher will finally give you the answer? Or have you started to build readiness? Have you started to turn inward? Have you started to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding? Because here's what I can promise you. If you're watching this video right now, if these words are landing in your chest in a way that feels both confronting and liberating, then you're closer than you think. The fact that you're here means something in you is ready to shift. Something in you is ready to stop searching and start receiving. Something in you is ready to trust that everything you need is already on its way. But you have to meet it halfway. You have to do your part. You have to build the container. You have to face the shadows. You have to surrender the control. You have to trust the timing. And most importantly, you have to stop waiting for permission from the universe, from others, from some external authority, to finally become who you already are. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to tell you you're ready. Nobody's coming to validate your path, to approve your choices, to confirm that you're doing it right. You have to give yourself that permission. You have to become your own authority. You have to trust yourself enough to take the step before you see the full staircase. And when you do, when you finally stop searching and start trusting, something miraculous happens. Not in a mystical, woo-woo sense, but in a deeply practical, deeply real sense. The right people start appearing. The right opportunities start opening. The right resources start flowing. Not because you're lucky, not because you're special, but because you're finally ready. You're finally vibrating at the frequency that attracts what you've been asking for. And here's the beautiful part. Once you understand this principle, once you embody this truth, you stop living in desperation. You stop living in lack. You stop living in the anxious energy of wondering if it's ever going to happen for you. Because you know that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. You know that divine timing is real. You know that the universe isn't withholding from you, it's preparing you. So, take a breath. Let yourself feel the weight of this moment. Let yourself acknowledge how far you've already come. Let yourself recognize that you're not the same person who started searching. You've grown. You've expanded. You've built capacity you didn't have before. And that matters. That counts. That's the work. And if you've made it this far in this video, if you're still here, still listening, still present, Then leave a comment below and tell me one thing you're ready to receive. Not what you want, not what you're chasing, but what you're ready to receive. Because there's power in naming it. There's power in claiming your readiness. There's power in telling the universe, and more importantly, telling yourself that you're no longer searching, you're receiving. And before you go, hit that like button. Not because I need the validation, but because it tells the algorithm to share this message with someone else who needs it. Someone else who's been searching. Someone else who's ready to stop. Someone else who needs to hear that divine timing is real, that readiness is everything, and that the universe is always responding to who you're becoming. This is the essential truth that changes everything. You don't find what you're looking for. You become ready for it, and it finds you. The universe waits until you stop searching to reveal what you've always needed. And now, right now, you're closer to that revelation than you've ever been. The searching is over. The receiving is beginning. Welcome home.